Each week, nearly a dozen movies are released theatrically. 40 films a month, more than 400 a year. That's a plethora of cinema. Too much cinema. You'd have to be an addict to see all that, but don't fret. We've got you covered. This is CinemAddicts.
Hey everyone, what's up? It's a new week of CinemAddicts. This is CinemAddicts episode 314. We're covering movies that are opening during the week of Friday, October 3rd, 2025. We have a lot to cover. Thankfully, Bruce Perky over at the Cinematic, over in the attic of cinema, he has about 4 movies to review, which hopefully lightens the load, so to speak, family show with me and Eric Holmes. This week, we might have a very quick, lickety-split, Quicksilver I know you're laughing at that. Eric Holmes.
Dude, that took a second, but that was Undercover Genius Joe.
Undercover Genius. Thank you so much, sir. But how do you feel about a Quicksilver show with me and you? Maybe we can do this like a 5-minute show. You think he has 42 minutes in the can?
Yeah.
I feel like...
I mean, anytime
check.
Bruce can lighten my load, I'm happy.
Family show. Very good job, Bruce Perky. This week,
all right, show's over. I can't go on.
Show's over. Okay, the movies.
It's all downhill from here on out.
It is pretty much that downhill from here on out. So, anyways, the movies we're covering this week: Coyotes, Good Boy, Are We Good, Predators, The Lost Bus, and Affinity. That's 6 movies that we're covering. And here's the thing: I want to say we have a weekly show, which is CinemAddicts, comes out every week. Me, Bruce, and Eric, we review movies coming out every week. But what I have not been doing the last couple of years on a diligent basis is uploading, downloading, loading, whatever, lighten your loading stuff with Eric Holmes. His interviews, a family show, right? Thank you, Eric. It has not been part of the CinemAddicts audio feed as much. I usually put it on our CinemAddicts YouTube channel. Moving forward, that will be on our every single episode. Every single interview that Eric Holmes does will be up now on our audio feed. So if you want to listen to Eric speak to filmmakers and actors for these movies we cover, please listen to these other episodes. Also, but remember, the mothership is once a week. We do these weekly episodes over at CinemAddicts, which is a main review show. But then maybe 2 or 3 times a week, you might actually be treated to some of Eric's interviews with these maybe actors and filmmakers, and sometimes I'll intersperse some of my interviews as well. What do you think of that, Eric Holmes? That I'm actually finally doing my job after 5 years to put your stuff on.
I think it's good, and I would say so far, like all the people I've interviewed have been great.
Most of them, yeah.
There's one. There's one. There's one I did today. I wasn't quite on top of my game, but Bernhardt from Deathstalkers was on top of his game, so he saved that interview for me. I'm doing one with Steve Kostansky, director of Psycho Gorman and Deathstalker. I'm doing that later on today, and I've had the coffee. It's kicked in. I'm awake, so hopefully that one. Hopefully I'll do better. I know.
You're not a big fan of his films, are you, Eric? You don't like
no
PG Gorman? No, not so good. No. Frankie Frico? Why no?
Historically, I've hated all of them.
He can't wait to interview. He's obviously
just to be very clear, Psycho Gorman, Frankie Frico is awesome. Deathstalker, can't talk about it. It's awesome, but we'll talk about that later.
It's embargoed. It's awesome. Yeah. So hey, when a movie is embargoed, can't you say it's awesome? We're gonna say it right here on CinemAddicts. We're breaking some rules. He said it's awesome. We're gonna review it next week here over in CinemAddicts. Me, Bruce, and Eric got a little bit of Eric's little.
I can't say it's awesome, but I can say get excited.
Get excited. Okay.
Yeah,
all right. Okay. Get excited. But again, hopefully Eric and I will make this top half of the CinemAddicts. Maybe we'll be talking about for another 2 minutes, and then we're just going to kick it over to the Bruce show for reviews.
Speaking of get excited.
Yes.
I saw a trailer just a few minutes ago before starting this.
Okay. Let's hear it. What's the trailer?
Oh, so say it was back in 2008, 7, 8, 9, somewhere around there. I was a fan of Kevin Walker, like Andrew Kevin Walker, like anyone
as a writer, writer of 7.
Love 7, 8mm was good. I've liked all his movies I've seen up until that point. I think it was just 7 and 8mm and maybe something else. I can't remember. But anyway, he had this script floating. Oh,
the Netflix one. Okay.
Well,
the
Netflix wasn't even a thing back then.
Okay, right.
And I think if it was still like shipping out like DVDs and stuff.
Sure.
Nowhere near what it is today. But anyway, he had this upcoming movie called Psycho Killer. And I think originally David Fincher was supposed to direct it. And then, so I was excited about that. And then I think at some point Fred Durst was supposed to direct it. Wasn't
He's
as
a good
excited
director.
about at the time. I didn't know that,
Oh,
but
okay.
I
Okay.
agree with you. But at the time, it was like Fred Durst. What? Okay, whatever.
He
But
should direct more.
I'd found the script online, and I just like you know read the thing top to bottom, and it was creepy as hell. There's one scene in particular that takes place outside of like a Walgreens, and the psycho killer, you never learn who it is throughout the whole script. It's just kind of like this guy, he's either wearing a mask or he's obscured or whatever, or it's like over his shoulder. Like you never see him, he never really talks. And then he just goes around, finds like poor hapless people just going about their day, and then I'll, find find them alone and kill them, and then move on to the next one. And he goes to like this Walgreens parking lot, and there was this car sitting there. He sees like this lady pull up, get out of the car. She's wearing her uniform, goes into work. Psycho killer breaks into the car, gets in the back seat, and just sits there. And just sitting there
Hmm.
staring at the wall. Like the way it's just, I don't think I'm selling it right, but the way it's described
No,
in
you are.
the script is just like he's just
Hmm.
sitting there waiting. And then you cut to her just going about her day-to-day life, knowing that this guy's in the back car waiting to kill her. And so just like watching someone just, you know, have no idea that they're doomed. And then
Wow.
like the whole setup and anticipation of that event when it finally happened. Like it's a bunch of stuff like this. Just like creepy, when the audience is ahead of the characters in such a way that it's like the bomb under the table sort of thing. There's a lot of that in the script. And then I saw that they finally had a trailer for it. And yeah,
It looks pretty good.
very
Trailer looks
much
good.
looking forward to Psycho Killer.
Right. Okay. So that's Psycho Killer. Check it out.
Got Psycho Killer in 2026. Got Project Hail Mary in 2026.
So it's looking.
2026 is going to be my year. But
Oh,
we got
very
Death
good.
Stalker this year.
An embargo, but you get excited
Yeah,
for
I
our
can't talk
stuff.
about it. It might suck. Who knows? Uh,
Right. But Psycho Killer that's a crime genre type of film. Let's get into
yeah.
one of our movies this week, and I think the movie is a documentary. The movie slash documentary is called Predators. Quote: To Catch a Predator was a popular TV show designed to hunt down child predators and lure them to a film set where they would be interviewed and eventually arrested. Predators is a chilling, thought provoking exploration of the scintillating rise and staggering fall of the show and the world it helped create. The movie from MTV Documentary Films comes out via national rollout October 3rd. Eric Holmes, he actually, and this is my fault, he saw this 2 weeks ago because I think Predators came out in select theaters a couple of weeks ago. So I don't know if you did a rewatch on this again, Eric, but you did see this a couple of weeks ago. You were very excited for me to watch it. I did not do my job and watch it, but hopefully you have the lingering memory of Predators for a review. What do you think?
I forgot all about it.
Oh,
No, this documentary was pretty good. So I'd watch. I don't know if I've seen all of To Catch a Predator. I've
mm,
seen most of them at least, and then they've since gone on and done like Hanson versus Predator. There's like a couple episodes of that on YouTube. I've seen those. It's kind of like I don't know, just watching predators just walk into the predator trap, and it,
get
it's
arrested.
it's weird because they act a certain way when they're talking to who they think is like a 13-year-old boy or girl or whatever the mark is. And then, they're just saying all these sexually explicit things to them, what they're going to do to them. They'll show up with like a bunch of alcohol, drugs, and like condoms. And then as soon, hey, how's it going? Ooh, can't wait to see you take your shirt off. And then as soon as Chris Hansen comes out, it's like, I just was coming here to talk. I was trying to help him,
Right,
really,
exactly.
because I can't be honest with you, I wasn't even going to do anything. And
Right,
so just
exactly.
watching him change from predator to victim mode. The weird thing about this documentary is I think kind of part of its thesis is it's almost because I believe the director David Osit was in the documentary is revealed that he was a victim of sexual predators in the past, and so he would watch the To Catch a Predator as like a catharsis, I guess, and then he had issues with how they went about it, and there were certain parts like with how they do the catch to catch a predator, I guess makes sense because You want to catch, if the whole point of doing a sting operation, like if I'm going to catch someone selling drugs, I want them to come to me and sell drugs, and then I arrest them. That's how that should work. How it shouldn't work is for me to go to you, pressure you into buying drugs, and then when you finally give in, then arrest you for that. And
Right.
so this posits that there's might be a couple times where the mark may have pushed a little too far and maybe entice someone that wouldn't have been enticed otherwise. There's a little bit of that. I can tell you that's not the majority of the predators that come. A lot of them just willingly hop onto them in a chat room or wherever they find these underage people at, and then go to meet up with them. They talk for a bit, and then Chris Hansen comes out, and then all that stuff happens. There was one particular episode where one of the predators goes to his house, and how did this work out? So he was supposed to meet up with one of the marks and then decided not to show up. It turned out I'm gonna mess this up. Either way, one of the predators ended up shooting himself in his own house. And then now it's, oh, have we taken it too far or whatever? And I pushed back a little bit on the, not that anyone, not that anyone should die, but they'll use the post Chris Hansen part of the Predators when they're getting in victim mode or crying or being real submissive or I'm sorry, I just need help, blah, blah, blah. Well, that's fine. And I sympathize with that, but I think I'm looking at crocodile tears here. You're acting this way because you got caught. It, I think had someone acted like that before they engaged in that, I would be a lot more sympathetic to them. This documentary seems like it's being sympathetic, maybe towards the wrong angle of it, or not even necessarily sympathetic, but at least let's at least explore this. Like, is this the right way to go about things? And then it even asks the question is like, why are you doing this? Because like Chris Hansen, are you doing this to make the world a better place, or are you doing this to sensationalize and exploit these people? And you could say that, yeah, exploit them. They're predators, why not? But at the same time, like if you're not going to help the situation, what are we really doing? Like, for instance, like sorry, it's a family show, but quite honestly, like families, kids should know about this, that these, people exist. When you have a child rapist and they go through the act and you arrest them, that's great. But I think another thing this documentary, I don't know if it explicitly asks this, but it's implied. Is there a better way to go about this? Because
Mm.
once they've done the deed, it's done. What you want to do is stop it before it happens. And then how can you do that? I wish it would have went like a little deeper into that, but for what it is, I mean, this is about the show To Catch a Predator, so it doesn't go too deep into that aspect of it. But, you know, it is a documentary pretty good.
Who do they interview? They obviously interview Hansen. Do they interview
Yeah,
just
in fact, it implies that Chris Hansen himself is a predator of a different sort.
Oh, really?
Like
Interesting.
where like the people Chris Hansen like catches, they're child predators. Chris Hansen is a predator of predators. So it's got that's kind of part I push back on a bit because it's got that, oh, you're racist against racist people. That's not how that works.
Okay.
That,
All right.
like if you're going to be a bigot, F you. If you're going to be prejudiced against people who are prejudiced, fine. I don't care.
Right.
That
Right.
you can't say I can do this bad thing and you're just as bad as me because you're doing the exact same bad thing because I'm doing my bad thing. It's like, no, if you're not doing the bad thing, this other bad thing doesn't exist.
Okay. So that
So
is Predator. Oh, go ahead.
it's a false equivalency. But
Right.
so there's a bit of that which kind of I push back on, but there's other stuff in the documentary that's kind of bang on. And if you've seen To Catch a Predator, there's probably some behind the scenes stuff in this that you might not know had happened.
Mm.
And that's also interesting, just from even not a predator standpoint, but just from a behind the scenes, like, oh crap, I didn't know that was going on. That's interesting. So yeah, I pushed back on some stuff, but overall, it was a really good documentary.
What is your rating on Predators, Eric?
That's tough. That's tough.
Again, National Rollout is Friday, October 3rd. Currently,
Yeah,
it's playing in select theaters. So,
I want to go. I'll go 4.5.
4.5 stars from
I,
Eric Holmes for
I'm
Predators.
between 4 and 5. I can't quite go 5, but 4 seems too low, so I'll just split it down the middle, go four and a
Okay.
half.
All right, that's 4.5 stars from Eric Holmes for Predators, documentary from MTV Documentary Films. Again, currently playing in select theaters before it goes on a national rollout Friday, October 3rd. Tell us what you think of Predators. Next up is another documentary. This document, we are the documentary channel, it seems. This is documentary is called Are We Good? Are we
Yes,
good?
we are.
We are. We are. Me and Eric Holmes are both good. I'm assuming Bruce Perky is good as well. But this documentary is not about any of us three. It's about podcast pioneer and comedian Mark Maron. It centers on his life following the sudden loss of his partner and filmmaker, Lynn Shelton. Quote, Maron struggles with grief, disillusionment, and a shifting comedy landscape. The movie opens specifically in New York and LA on October 3rd. And I'm assuming on more markets next week. Main release is New York, LA. Probably look out for it maybe weeks later or months later on digital, and on demand. It's directed by Steven Feinartz,
Yep. Fine
Feinartz.
arts.
Feinartz.
Like fine art.
Okay, fine arts. Eric Holmes, actually, we've been mentioning, he's been doing so many interviews, doing a great job on that. We are going to add his interview after Eric and my review of Are We Good in a few moments. Eric Holmes, your thoughts on this? Are you a fan of Mark Maron? Were you a fan of this documentary?
Yes and yes. I think the most amazing thing about this is that like, Mark Maron's got an insanely popular podcast. If you're hearing this, I'm sure you've also heard many more of his podcasts.
Yeah.
But it's amazing that you can do a documentary on Mark Maron and still get some insight because there's so like he speaks openly about just about everything. So what could you possibly learn about Mark Maron in a Mark Maron documentary? And yet you still get I think maybe the difference is that this is from someone else's point of view, in this case Steve Feinart's point of view, following Mark Maron around and how he deals with grief. He even goes through his whole career of how his comedies kind of sort of evolved throughout,
Observational. Yeah.
well, just how it's evolved throughout the decades
Yeah.
and then how it definitely took a turn, or maybe how he approached his grief after losing Lynn. Yeah, I lost the thread, but basically the fact that they can get anything, any new insights or anything new at all on Mark Maron when he's so open about everything. I think it's just that third person point of view looking in maybe gives a different context. So maybe like Mark Maron is like, you listen to him on the podcast, oh, maybe he's being self-deprecating. Maybe he's playing it up a little bit. Maybe he's playing it down a little bit. But then when he's following them, you feel like you're seeing the real deal. So now you can parse out when Mark Maron's like being real versus when he's playing stuff up and maybe parse that out a little bit. But
Mm.
either way, I think just the fact that they got any sort of new perspective on him when he's so open and he's got such like there's no shortage of Mark Maron in the world. The fact that they can get anything new out of it, whether a perspective or anything, is pretty dang impressive.
Yeah, this documentary is pretty much, it does have an overview of Maron stuff, but it is very laser focused on him processing the grief with Lynn Shelton's passing. And what's interesting is I'm a fan of Mark Maron. I like his stuff. Eric likes his stuff. I haven't listened to Bruce's review of Are We Good yet, but you don't have to be in the bag with Maron stuff to appreciate Are We Good? Because if you look at it as a person trying to process his grief and get through it, or maybe not get through it, live with it, I think that's a very universal thing that is interesting to watch through the lens of a comedian, because he's actually having problems with how is he's processing the grief, but how is he going to inject grief into his stand-up? And that was what Eric is alluding to about how his comedy has evolved in many ways. In a tragic sense, it's evolved within the last several years because he's injecting this real tragic situation into his comedy, and you get to see him struggling with that part of his process as well. Very interesting, and you get to actually see a little bit more into his relationship with Lynn Shelton, and she was a very successful filmmaker during her life, and you get to really get a bird's eye view of their relationship from. It's very interesting, and I don't know. I think you don't have to really 100% love Marin's comedy without and not and you could still appreciate Are We Good, I think. I don't know if you agree with that, Eric, but I don't
Yeah,
think
I
yeah.
think so. And this is also one of those things like the documentary from the perspective of, insight into, how Mark Maron's processing grief, or just a documentary about grief in general and how it changes you, how you process it, how different people go through different versions of that. If you just like Mark Maron, it's got plenty of a stand-up within it as well.
Yes.
And
Uh-huh.
then
100.
so let's say you don't care about any of that other stuff, but you just want like greatest hits of stand up, you get that in here too.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, it's a for me, Are We Good? In New York and LA, October 3rd, directed by Steven Feinartz. It's a 4-star rating for me. This is just a solid, well done documentary that it, I like Anderson would say, goes down smooth, went down smooth with me. I love cats. He lives with 2 cats. He lives in the San Fernando Valley. I like the San Fernando Valley. Really loved Lynn Shelton as well. So I was in the bag, but again, this has, in my opinion, extra, and like Eric was saying, has extra value for people who are not 100% in the bag for Marin stuff. So I think this is a universally good and solid documentary. 4 stars for me. Eric Holmes, final thoughts and rating.
You know what? I'll go 4.5 on this too. Because I think I was just in general at 4 stars, but I think just the fact that they got anything new, Mark Maron, when that should be an impossible task, I just think is impressive. So
Okay.
I think that's worthy of an extra half-star bump.
1/2 star bump from Eric Holmes. And if you're wondering, did Eric Holmes get anything really insightful or extra from Are We Good from this interview? Well, check out his interview with Steven Feinartz right now.
I'm here with Steve Feinartz, director of Are We Good? Documentary, I guess broadly about Mark Maron, but it's kind of like a biography, serve as context to how he's developed now to where he's at now, along with him dealing with grief of Lynn Shelton.
Yep.
How much of the so documentaries are always weird because usually when you start, you don't know fully what you get into. How early did this documentary start, and how much of this has already transpired when you started, and how much of it changed as you were making the documentary?
Yeah, we had a general sense of where we were going to go with it. After Lynn had passed, Julie Seabaugh, our producer and story editor, reached out to me about, the idea, and we met with him and talked about it. And it was, the intention was to make a film about dealing with the grief and building an hour of comedy around that and what that looked like. But it turned into, as most, like you mentioned, documentaries, how most of them are, especially follow docs, like verite docs like this. You find different threads and you pull on them and see what else is there. And we found a lot of different things, just surrounding his career and, his father and the meaning of Lynn in his life and grappling with the loss in a way that none of us really thought it was going to go. So it was a 3.5 year endeavor to make this, to shoot this thing. But I think it's the only way to have done it. I think having to do it in a year or so, I don't think we would have gotten what we needed.
Yeah. I kind of want to talk about Julie Seabaugh a little bit because she's credited as story editor, writer on this, and I always get confused when I see a writing credit on a documentary. I was like, don't you just shoot people talking and then put it together? But apparently, writers of documentaries do something quite different. What can you describe what Julie did on this?
Julie's wonderful. She's a great writer herself. She's an author and a filmmaker. She, really when we started, with the structure of what this film was going to be from the get-go, she had a plan for it. A lot of things shifted over time, but it sort of set us on the path to what the film would be. So yeah, going through figuring out what the act structure would be and going there. But a lot of it happens, as I said, through filming, and you find new things and then you adapt. But that was, very helpful to the direction of the film. And then also she did the work of going through a lot of these Instagram lives and podcast intros and finding some gems and, noting those. And, we used a lot of that. So it's a lot of work, Mark's got it's a lot of footage out there, Mark, of audio and video and just, across the board. So, having Julie and having, a team of incredible editors on this film as well, Derek Boonstra and Natalie Ancona and Jen Harper and Pete Sajarto, our AE. Just everybody did such a great job. It was a team effort all along.
Yeah, that's got to be pretty daunting work. It's like, hey, here's a beach, find 3 specific grains of sand. Okay, let's see what we can do.
It's a lot. It's a lot of work. Luckily, a lot of the stuff is not cataloged online. You know, you can seek out transcripts from a lot of the podcasts and all that, thankfully. But there was, yeah, I think when we first started, it was a lot less of that available.
Yeah. And also, so in the documentary, in a lot of the times, Mark Maron's turning to the camera, just kind of like, oh, we're going to shoot this now. Oh, you got to, like, he's talking crap that I assume you or whoever's behind the camera at the time. What was it like working with him on this? Like, I'm guessing he's being playful there, or was there any sort of butting heads or maybe some regret on his end? Like, oh, why did I let anyone do this?
I mean, I think at the beginning there was a little bit of fear of what is the point of this thing, you know, and like why are we doing this? And he was a little annoyed, I guess, me going to the comedy store all the time and like, you know, he likes to just go there and be, you know, do his thing and, you know, having a camera around. You know, we filmed like 12 or 13 days there with him. It's a lot. He was getting tired of it, but I get it. I don't think I'd want that either. And then towards the last year of filming, it was kind of like, when is this thing going to end? What's the end here? And we finally got it. But it could have been a year shorter, you know, if we had found that ending, that right ending. But it just happened the way it happened.
Wait, I mean,
The timing was actually ended up working out, I think, because the end of the podcast is happening now. So I think the timing of the film coming out actually is pretty good.
what was that moment finding the end to this? Because like, unless like Mark Maron like happened to pass away, I mean that's pretty definitive. But for someone that's still going and still successful and still dealing with things, like how do you sit there and look at it and go, "Oh yeah, this is it. This is where we're gonna cut it off."
He was just feeling very contemplative and reflective on this final scene. I don't want to give much away, but there's a scene, and we were just walking with him, and just a lot of things were coming out. It felt like a look back and a way to, yeah, bring everything that we filmed and everything into a big picture and distill it down. So it just happens. I mean, you know, with him, you know, it's like with anybody else, you never know what you're going to get out of them on a certain day, but that day was lucky, and we got something really special. It's a lot of the one thing I say about, you know, filmmaking, doc filmmaking specifically, is just shoot and then just shoot more, because you're always going to want something else in the edit. Is, you know, especially these verite documentaries are just, you know, it's a lot of work, and you're just going through, like, you know, mostly just Mark looking at his phone or dealing with or feeding his cats or whatever. It's all this footage, but within that, there's hopefully gems, but you just gotta keep going, just as much as you can, as much as they can stomach the subject. You just gotta
What
keep.
what were some what were some of the discoveries you made during the documentary? Like something you shot and it's like, ooh, didn't know we'd come across that. And then maybe what were some stuff that you shot where it's like, that's a little too personal or cuts a little too deep. We got to cut that out or
Cuts too deep. There was stuff, but it was we filmed, but just didn't feel like it was necessary to tell the story because we already understood what was happening without getting into too much detail. But yeah, things that we, you know, him going through Lynn's suitcase and reflecting on her a bit there was a pretty powerful scene that I didn't think we were gonna get. And then learning about things through the suitcase and just it all connected. Yeah, I think those glimpses of Mark's inner dialogue about whether he's going to find somebody again or whether, you know, he even wants to, that kind of thing.
yeah. Well, Are We Good is going to be in theaters in New York, LA, October 3rd, and nationwide theatrical events on October 5th and 8th. Yeah, thanks for joining me. I guess we'll end on this. I just want to get a movie recommendation from you, either a movie that's real personal to you or something that's like, this movie's really good and no one talks about it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I got a documentary that I've been thinking about a lot lately that I love. It's called Some Kind of Heaven by Lance Oppenheimer. It's a doc about the villages in Florida retirement facility, and it's really great. It's a phenomenal documentary.
What was it about that one that got your juices flowing?
I love, first of all, I love how it's shot. It's so cinematic and cool, and he just shines light on these really odd characters, and it just these little glimpses into the lives of people that are like in their 70s and 80s, and you know, have a lot of stories. But it's yeah, that one just yeah, it really cuts deep. It's a beautiful little film. He did this show called Ren Fair on HBO as well, doc series. Very talented guy.
Nice. Well, I haven't heard of that, so that's a wonderful pick. I always love those ones when someone brings up something like, nope, never heard of that. So
Yeah,
we're
check it
gonna
out.
put that on the
Some
list.
kind of heaven. It's really great.
All right. Well, Steve, congratulations on the doc. It's really insightful, and which is strange for Mark Maron because I mean, with his podcast, it's like, what don't we know about him already? And then he shed light on some stuff, and it was very interesting. And congratulations on it.
Thanks so much, Eric. I appreciate it, man.
So
Okay,
almost
guys,
done, and
we're on.
okay.
Oh, you're done. Good job, Eric Holmes. I still, as of this recording, I still have to listen to the interview or edit it, or I'm sure it's wonderful. I'm sure it's wonderful.
No, you did hear. We just heard it just now.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. was really good, Eric. Very insightful questions. So again, check out Are We Good? October 3rd in New York and LA.
Eric, your questions were crap, but Steve Feinartz was great in it.
Yeah, Steve Feinartz was very great. And yeah, tell us what you think of Are We Good? Speaking of which, another movie that Eric did, and he did a bunch of interviews as well. He did an interview with Marcus Aurore and director Brandon Slagle recently. I put it up on our Cinematics YouTube channel. Please like, comment, share, subscribe. Definitely subscribe to our Cinematics YouTube channel because we put all our podcasts, all our audio podcasts on that channel are ad-free. And when we get monetized on Cinematics, that YouTube channel, I will continue to actually have all of our audio podcasts ad-free on that YouTube channel. So if you listen to us on YouTube, thank you. That's great. Subscribe. But if you listen to us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all the other podcatchers, which does have ads, thank you for supporting us as well because ads help us too. But Affinity, Marcos Aurore, directed by Brandon Slagle. What is this movie about? Eric, you're a huge fan of Marcos Aurore. Why and why should people see Affinity?
Okay, well, I'll read the summary here. PTSD afflicted ex-SEAL rescues and falls for a woman only to lose her to a mysterious kidnappers. Then Chris Hansen, no, just kidding. He gathers an elite team to retrieve her, but soon discovers the shocking truth. I'm not going to read that last sentence because that's a spoiler. But
okay.
First of all, the story in this is maybe a little kind of overcooked, but you're here. It's like, think of it as a comedy. You watch like Billy Madison. What's the story of Billy Madison? Doesn't matter. The story's there to hang jokes on, and that's why you love Billy Madison. The story here is to hang fights with Marcos Aurore and Brooke Ence and Louis Mandylor. Come on. But basically, this movie is just Marcos Aurore kicking the living crap. Actually, not just Marcos Aurore and Brooke Ence. Louis Mandylor is kind of like he has a similar role that he did in the Debt Collector movies. Where like he'll fight once in a while, but mostly he's there to be like Marcos Aurore's buddy or Bruno's buddy and support him. And you just get to watch him kick ass. And there's like a bunch of really cool action scenes. The way they shot like a lot of the fights. When I talked to Brandon Slagle, I brought this up. He hadn't seen the Roadhouse remake, but the fights have a similar look to it. And I know people hate the Roadhouse remakes. You're wrong, but that's fine. But I really like how the fight scenes were shot there. And they were shot not exactly the same, but similar where the camera movement's really dynamic throughout the fights. And it sort of enhances the fight. The camera is moving, but it's not like shaky cam to where it just adds confusion and chaos to it. It adds kind of a gracefulness to the fight. And watching Marcos Aurore, like, I mean, dude you don't want to get on his bad side. Because like oh crap, what was that? Diablo. In Diablo, where like he's more of a hulking menace, like a Michael Myers type, and his fighting is a lot more brutal. And this one, it's a lot faster and more graceful. Not dissimilar to his fighting style in the Undisputed movies, but like, I mean, the fact that he can punch like 12 people in like under 2 seconds is pretty impressive. This is a movie. This is why this movie is a 3-star banger. This is a movie you watch because you want to watch Marcos Aurore kick ass. You want to watch Brooke Ence, who I didn't know who she was, but apparently she was in the Wonder Woman movies and something else, and then this, and that's it. Like, she hasn't been in much, but she's a freaking badass too. And then, of course, anything with Louis Mandylor in it, I'm going to watch, and he's great as well. The story's kind of, whatever, but you're not coming here for the story. You're coming here for the action, and the action in this is great.
I think the movie's shot in Thailand too, so that's pretty cool. So Affinity, 3-star banger from Eric Holmes. It's currently available on digital. So.
Yeah, if you hear Marcos Aurore action and that gets your juices going, you're gonna be right at home here.
Okay.
If you're looking for movies that might be nominations for Best Picture at the Oscars, this is not that movie. But that's not the movie I want. That's not the movie I came into this for. I came in this to watch some people kick butt, and they did exactly that. And it was shot well, and it was choreographed great, and yeah, this is awesome.
Okay,
3-star
so that
banger.
is a 3-star banger recommendation from Eric Holmes for Affinity, starring Brooke Ence, Marcos Aurore, and Louis Mandylor. finally, as far as our feature reviews, we have a review of this movie called Good Boy. All three of us have seen this movie. It centers on a canine hero. His name's Indy.
We
Indy is
named
on
the
a
dog Indiana.
yeah, right, exactly. Very good, Eric Holmes with Connery. Dog is named Indy, is on a new adventure because his human owner, Todd, is leaving the city life for a long vacant family home out in the country. So this family home is sort of a cabin and it's was previously owned by Todd's late grandfather. I think the late grandfather, I think, is played by Larry Fessenden. But so there's a reason why,
Yes, yes.
okay, there's a reason why Todd is leaving the city to go to this vacant family home. And I don't know if we should really mention it, but he's just not in the best of health. Okay. He's spitting out
And
blood. We can say that.
yeah,
He's not in
yeah,
the,
because I was gonna say you can't overlook his health. Just you can't overlook it outright because that's the point of this.
that is the point. Okay. So Todd wants to spend some convalescing time at his grandfather's house out in the country with his dog Indy. That is the premise of this movie. You also see a little bit of or hear Todd's sister, who is understandably concerned of Todd regarding Todd's health, and I think you get to listen to her on a phone conversation now and again, and she might appear sometime in the story. You don't really get to see too much of their faces at all because Good Boy is from the
I think
POV, the whole entire movie of Indy. Yes.
I think the only human you see is Larry Fessenden.
Yeah,
'Cause
you're
you see
right.
the humans, but it's like watching like a cartoon or a kid show with like kids, and like the adults, you only like see their leg or like the bottom half of their torso down. Or like
Right.
if you do see their face, it's like obscured in
Neck down.
shadow or
Right.
like something's on
Neck
their
down.
face. Larry Fessenden's the only human character in this that you actually see, and I believe that's a flashback.
Yeah, and you see Fessenden through a VHS tape because
Yeah,
Fessenden was recording himself. The
yeah,
grandpa
yeah,
was
he was the
recording himself.
grandpa.
It was recording himself and it's a grainy VHS tape, which is being played by his grandson Todd. Which is why is Todd playing these tapes? Why is Todd acting weird? Why is Todd sick? Why is Todd getting really mad at his sister? There's a lot of
Which
things which yes,
that choice to portray the humans that way is a great
Mm.
choice because the star of this movie and
Yeah,
a tour de force performance by Indy the dog.
yes,
You
very.
know, Anderson always talks about like what's good direction. If you get great performances, you're a great director. Ben Lamberg should win Best Director at the Oscars because the performance he gets out of this dog, and it's not just a cute dog. Like this dog's actually like doing stuff and holding up the narrative, and like this Indy, the dog, this is a lead performance.
Yeah, because you have
And
some
and,
close-ups of the dog. You have some close-ups of Lindy, and Lindy
and the
performs
dog's
in those close-ups.
reacting to stuff and just
You
like
feel
doing
fear, the fear of the dog.
that
Yeah.
like I could believe a dog would do that. What I don't believe is that you could get a dog to do that convincingly in a movie, and they did. And that in
Right.
itself is just a huge feat that I think is just like it's doesn't have anything to do with the story itself, but the fact that they got that performance out of a dog is I can't praise that enough. It's just
I
amazing
will
that they're able
warn,
to do that.
yeah, I will warn viewers though regarding Good Boy. This is an atmospheric horror thriller. Don't expect this Tony Scott quick cuts, big, huge sound, overwhelming sound design with this is not a horror film in that sense of the word. This is more of a vibe, an atmosphere. You have to get into the scares. You have to, I think, just don't expect this big fireworks from Good Boy. This is more of a methodical, meditative, atmospheric type of experience. So I think, I don't know if you agree, Eric, you have to be in a certain mindset. Also, it helps if you're a dog lover, which I am, of course, Bruce is and Eric is, and most people are. If you love dogs, this is good because it's a great performance by Indy. Sorry, Eric.
This had, talking offline with me and Bruce. I think I said Skinamarink with a dog because
I haven't seen
it's
Skinner
got
or Mirroring, but I know what you're. Yeah.
it's got a lot more going on than Skinamarink did, but like how it's got that kind of eerie sort of tone to it. So if you didn't like Skinamarink, don't worry, it's not just staring at walls the whole time, but it's got that kind of eerie quietness to it that I think works really well for it. And Indy is charming as hell. He's a cute dog. He's a good boy,
And you
as the
will
name
have
implies.
Right, a very good boy. And
But
I think viewers will have different interpretations whether what's going on is a supernatural event
I
or if
think
it's actually real, just I mean, real supernatural, or if it's just within the imagination
I
of
I
Indy.
I think what's going on in the movie is pretty clear because so where Skinamarink is just a tone that matches a certain nostalgia and the eeriness that comes with that. This one's got more of a point of view of what it's trying to say because Indy keeps seeing like having all these weird dreams, and Indy keeps seeing all these strange things in this new house that him and Todd are at. And then Todd keeps getting sick. And the sicker that Todd gets, the more crazy stuff Indy's seeing. And so it's basically just a story of I'm watching a loved one die in front of me and I can't do anything about it. And so, like, you see Indy, he's like, look, the supernatural stuff that Indy's seeing, the dreams that he's having, I think have less to do with the supernatural and is just sort of an analog to Indy's watching his human die and he loves his
Hmm.
human and he wants to help, but he can't do anything about it. And
Hmm.
so all he can do is sit there and love him. As if you're watching someone, let's say, like die of cancer or die of some disease, what can you do? You can't do anything. You just gotta sit there and be with them and love them as Indy would to his human.
Okay. So that is a definite read on Good Boy, and it's not spoilerish because it's pretty much the theme of the movie. Is it could either be one or the other. That's a pretty interesting read from Eric. Would love to hear what you think of Good Boy. There's other stuff that happens, so it's not a foregone conclusion that a lot of things will happen that you think it's going to happen. But some of that stuff is, I think, even though it's clear for Eric, might not be clear for you. Could be left open to interpretation because of the composition of the scenes, the
Oh,
way. Yes.
I mean, as far as like a horror movie goes, there's definitely some creepy moments. There's like the a thing, like
Yeah.
humanoid thing, kind of like
Yeah.
covered in like black sludge or whatever.
Right. Possible.
They got a couple great jumps here. There's one in particular where Indy's sitting at the foot of the bed, and then a hand just comes out from the bed and like pulls Indy in. It's like, what the?
Yeah, and you're wondering what that is, and
Yeah,
well, we're not going to say what that is if we actually know what it is. So, anyways, there's a lot of
I
questions.
think can you say the spoiler and you can leave it in there, take it out.
I think probably
But,
after. What did you want to say?
well, no, it's not a.
Yeah, if you
Indy
think it's a
doesn't
spoiler,
die. Don't worry about if you're worried about Indy dying, you're safe.
well, first of all, it is a spoiler that you said that, Eric, but it's correct that you said that, Eric, because the filmmakers behind Good Boy, which is very interesting, they launched a PSA regarding Indy because people are worried about Indy dying. So what you said is a
Okay,
spoiler, but
okay.
what's funny is they actually released the spoiler that Indy does not die in Good Boy
Okay,
because
okay.
so yeah,
I would say also that like Indy's safety isn't really the concern here. I think the bigger concern is Todd, his human, and
right. What happened?
whether or
What
not
happens?
Todd makes it out is because we're definitely worried and concerned for Indy, but we're also following Indy in that Indy's concerned for Todd. So it's not less of what happens to Indy, but more of how is Todd going to get through? Is there anything Indy can do to help? What's gonna come of his human? Is Todd gonna make it out okay? I think that's the more important thing here. But also, like people, the only reason I hesitate is because it is a spoiler whether or not Indy lives. But also know that kind of like what you said, people are like, I don't want to watch a movie where a dog dies at the end, and I get
And
that. But Indy's fine by the end of it. So if you're worried about
yeah,
that, don't worry about it.
yeah. And again, it's a PSA from the filmmakers
Yeah.
that hey, come see this movie, which opens Friday, October 3rd. It's worth a look, in my opinion. Good Boy, atmospheric, get into that right mindset, okay? And it's really a movie. It is a horror thriller, but it's really also about grief. And we talked about are we good processing grief? It's also about processing grief through the POV of a dog and what a dog is going through. So whether it's supernatural or real, Eric had a read. You'll have your own read on Good Boy, and that's a really interesting thing. A lot of stuff is can be left open to interpretation, or you'll have your own solid opinion regarding what happens on Good Boy. Very interesting concept for me. 4 stars for Good Boy. What
Oh,
about you,
four
Eric?
stars? That seems incredible. I'm 6.9 on this.
Oh wow.
I was dialed into the atmosphere. I was impressed by the performance they got out of Indy. I picked up on the analogies and the metaphors going on. And Indy is just incredibly charming. He's a good boy, and I just want to scratch him behind the ears and feed him dog treats all day until he dies many decades. Should also point out, if you check out Indy's IMDb,
Yeah.
I don't know what this is. It's got one acting credit. That's Good Boy, but Indy has a writing credit, a directing credit, and a
That's so
producer
funny.
credit for something that's not Good Boy.
Oh, that's very interesting.
I don't know. It's Indie KMBL. It says it's a music video. I have no idea what that is, but I
Who
just thought it
knows?
was I thought it was funny that he had like his own IMDb page with like something other than actor. You know how many dogs you know with a writing credit? I don't know
That's pretty
one.
funny. That is funny. So again, that is Good Boy. 6.9 stars from Eric Holmes. I give it 4 stars. Still 4 stars, pretty good. That's an above average review for me. But
I would say for this movie, 4 stars is incredibly low. But
tell us what you think. Yeah, it's different horses for courses and courses for horses and different. Well,
yeah,
it'd be interesting to see. Do you guys think it's low or do you think 6.9 is too high? Tell us
different
what you
dogs
think.
for different hogs.
Yes, exactly. The most important, no matter what Eric says or what I say, most important is you guys give Good Boy a shot when it hits theaters Friday, October 3rd. We're almost out of here. Finally, before we go, Eric Holmes, I know you put F1 on the Google Doc, but I just want to, before you go, eventually we'll get to your reaction on that later, but in a future episode, because I'm not into a Brad Pitt racing movie right now. But one
You
battle
should
after.
be.
Oh, okay. One battle after. What's your rating on F1? That's your review. What's your rating?
Oh,
2
it's
stars?
4.5.
4.5. Okay. F1.
Dude,
Joseph Kosinski, right?
F1, yeah, they talk about it on Film Vault.
Okay, good. What's that? Is that a
F1
podcast? Yeah, of
F1
course. We
is
love you, Anderson. Yeah.
F1 is basically hold your hand through a lot of it, but I don't know a lot about racing, and the fact that the announcers are constantly narrating the movie more or less during the races highlights the strategy going into it that I
Cool.
had no idea, and it's definitely a crowd pleaser. I understand why this movie did well, and I kind of want to watch it again.
Oh, okay. So that's F1 from Eric Holmes. He gave it 4.5 stars. One battle after another. How does it rank as far as your PTA ranking films, as far as best to worst, and is it up there? Everyone loves it. What did you think of one battle after another?
I could have done without the first 40 minutes of this movie.
Really?
I was almost ready to give up on it.
Oh,
Then the rest of the movie happened, and then I was like, once the story got going and I knew what it was, then I'm like, okay, I can kind of get on board with this. But that first 40 minutes was just meandering and not going anywhere, and I was just like,
interesting.
how much fucking longer we got on this thing? This is
Really?
Oh
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
I was not a fan of this movie up until about the point where DiCaprio was going for his daughter, and
Okay. Right.
then yeah, what's his name? Benicio del Toro.
All right.
They get
Yeah.
together, and then like the story's actually picking up, and then you
Right.
learn what Sean Penn is trying to do.
Okay.
I actually
Okay.
maybe a little before that, because it was the part where like they went back for was it the French 75? What was the name of
I
the
forgot the
group?
name. Yeah. Right.
It was like the
Exactly.
French 75 or something like that. But Colonel Lockjaw was going after him. You had that one lady, she was at the restaurant or store or whatever, and she sees someone coming in with like you know, looking all like they came there to take care of her. And then she goes running out the back door, and you see her like bust out the back door and just completely go sideways because she got popped in the head. One dude
Right.
running down the steps, and then dude's just waiting there behind the steps, like shot him right there, like the way they took him out. Like that started getting kind of interesting. And then the final bits with
These are this is a little bit of a spoiler review, a little bit of a spoiler review
a
from
little bit.
Eric. You mentioned people who died. Let's see, the French
Well,
75, the French
that's the
75,
yeah that I mean
the French
that's the
75.
one of the inciting incidents. But the
That's true.
inciting incident didn't happen till like 30, 40 minutes into the movie, and then by
I
then
agree
it's
with
like
that.
we should have started here. Like why the hell
Mm,
it's like a movie that starts with someone turning their alarm clock off, waking up, taking a shower, brushing their teeth. It's like, yeah, we don't need to see this. Let's get to the point. This took a while to get there, but it finally did. And then I liked the movie after that. So I'd probably go 3 stars on this.
three
But
stars on one battle after another from
yeah,
Eric Holmes. The Revolutionary Group is correct.
I will
The
say
French 75, the French 75. Yeah,
I may be a
minority on this because everyone loves it.
neophyte
Yeah.
or whatever, or I don't know what the word is.
What?
Mouth breather. Call it what you will. I will watch F1 5 more times before I watch this another time.
Ooh, love it.
Yes.
Yeah. You're doing that to drive up views on our YouTube, or what are you doing?
No,
Oh
it's
no,
just
that's an honest. You're being honest.
I will say
you
the
were-
ending of One Battle After Another might be one of my favorite endings of a Paul Thomas Anderson movie, just in general.
but you were disappointed with One Battle After Another. Let's face it, it's 3 stars,
That
right?
it wasn't even that I was disappointed. It was just like that first
40 minutes.
yeah, that first bit was like, come on. Like this is
Oh.
2.5 hours. Use your 2.5 hours. Why are we wasting time on all this crap?
Oh, wow. Okay. Very interesting mini review from Eric Holmes for One Battle After Another. Tell us what you think of Eric's take. Was the 40 minutes a waste of time for you? Was this movie just 3 stars for you? Tell us what you think of One Battle After Another. Just hit us up. All right. That's it. Eric Holmes, great job again. Last couple of
Yes.
weeks, you've been interviewing like a
Brandon
madman.
Slagle, you made a better movie than Paul Thomas Anderson. Put that feather in your cap.
I love it. Yes. Eric Holmes is saying Affinity is better than One Battle After. I love it. One Battle After
We'll say
Another.
more. We'll say more entertaining. We'll say
More entertaining. Okay, very
I feel
good.
like Brandon Slagle might even kick my butt for saying that. But
For saying that. All right. Tell us what you think, Brendan Slagle. All right. That's it. That's not really it. That's it. Just it for me and Eric. Eric needs to take some time off because he's not taking time off. He's going to interview Steven. What's his name? Koskowski or what is Kostansky for what's the Death Stalker, right? Death Stalkers or Death Stalker? Death Stalker.
Death Stalker. It's the name of the character.
Yeah, my fault. My fault. In 3 hours, you need to go back. Why don't you go back to sleep for a couple hours because you have to work tonight too. You got to sleep right now for a couple hours and then get ready.
I had a couple cups of coffee earlier today, and it's finally kicking in. So.
All right, great job.
I honestly just kind of want to talk about F1 some more.
Go
watch F1. Go watch F1.
Go watch F1.
In fact, looking at the box office, like F1's old news. Everyone's seen that, but
yeah,
I will say I still think Ford v Ferrari is better, and F1 is definitely like a dumbed down version. But it's like
it's still very good. Okay.
It tickled all the right parts, hit all the right notes for me, and it was kind of like it's kind of like what I was hoping Gran Turismo would have been. It was Gran Turismo was trying to get there, didn't quite get there. F1 did.
Okay, so that is Eric's huge endorsement for F1. We are out of here for this week in CinemAddicts. Next week, again, Death Stalker is going to be one of the movies we cover, and we're going to cover a whole bunch of other stuff. You're going to hear a lot more stuff from Eric Holmes.
Death Stalker, it might suck.
Oh yeah,
might be one of the best of the year. Who knows? Who's to say?
And again, for our Patreon this month, I'm going to reach out for Patreon because this month being October 2025, we are covering the year 1998 for our Patreon, I believe, Eric Holmes. I think that's 1998 should be an interesting year. Reach out to that. Eric's got some work to do. He has a job tonight as well. But most importantly, you guys, tell us what you think of movies that you're watching. And yeah, hang on for just a little bit longer because Bruce Perky is over there to give you some more reviews over at the Cinematic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Cinematic. I have decided to stay in the attic this week. I just had Eric, throw up the microphone and the recording equipment and a little light for the corner. I know it looks different. It looks like I'm downstairs, but I'm back up in the attic today. I just thought that might be a better place for me to be. I mean, I've been banished here for so long, it feels like home. It's a little bit of Stockholm syndrome, I guess. But hey, I feel good up in the attic. It's dry. It's not that warm, but it's warm enough. I've got my friends. Yes, I call them my friends. Sometimes they're snacks. Just depends. Depends on my mood. So what do I have this week for you? I have 4 movies. There was a lot of movies on our watch list or our screener list. Probably 8, I think. Something like that. And there's quite a few I was interested in, but I stuck it down to 4. I've got Coyotes. I've got Good Boy. I've got The Lost Bus. And I've got Are We Good? So there's some interesting screeners this week. And I bet there's a few of you have at least heard of Good Boys. Anyway, let's get to it. Oh, by the way, I talked a week or so ago about almost being done with my journal. And I am, my movie journal. The last entry, so the last movie that made it into this first book, which I have some stickers on from Joseph Bridges, which I still need to send something back to Joseph Bridges. Joseph Bridges, what do you need? I'm not rich, but what do you need? The last entry was Coyotes from September 26, 2025. The first entry in this book was Our Father the Devil from August 19th, 2023. The first entry in the new book is Good Boy from September 26th, 2025. And look, I had some more stickers still, so I went ahead and put some more stickers, mostly from Joseph Bridges. I had a few myself, but I guess this is my version of, you know, how people have their laptop and they love to cover with stickers. They have their big old, I don't know, big giant water jug that they use, and they cover that with stickers. Well, this is like that, but in movie land, I suppose. Anyway, let's get to it. Coyotes, directed by Colin Minihan. It stars Justin Long as the dad of the family, Scott, Kate Bosworth as the mom, Liv. You've got the daughter, I believe, if I get this right, Chloe is the daughter, played by Mila Harris. I don't know which way you say it. Probably Mila, because there's only one L. And then you've got Julie and a bunch of other people. You got a bunch of other characters here. This is one of those movies that every time a character gets introduced, there's like a little freeze frame of the character as a cartoon, and the name of the character flashes across the screen, which is odd because some of the characters end up being main characters, and some of the characters are not that important to the story. So I guess they just like the style, because Scott, Justin Long's character, is supposed to be a comic book artist, and that's why those things pop across the screen. So this is a pretty basic concept. If you know anything about Los Angeles in the modern age, the last, 20 years, once again, Greg could speak to this as a person who lives in the general area. It's been known that like the coyotes have been driven into the hills, sort of driven out of the wilderness as things get, built up. Pretty common to see them, I guess, especially in like the Hollywood Hills and leading down to the canyons in those areas. And people, worry about their pets. The cold open of this is like two, very influencer type, always taking a selfie or a selfie video, vain Hollywood women or whatever, and they're out walking their little dog. It's a Paris Hilton sort of analog, and her dog goes off into the brush, and she calls her dog, and it's getting taken by a coyote, and then the coyote comes out and kills the woman. A pack of coyotes kills the woman, and you're like, okay, it's going to be a movie about killer coyotes invading the Hollywood Hills, and it's also going to be a little bit of a satire on the vapid, people of LA or of Hollywood, or the rich, the elites, the, people who are really into just, all the stereotypes, right? Plastic surgery, drugs, money, whatever that might be. And then most of our movie, though, is a focus on the little family that way I mentioned, Scott, Liv, and Chloe, and they seem to be doing pretty well. There might be a little bit of strife in the family, but overall the family has pretty good energy between them. The dad might be a little bit of a coward. He seems like he doesn't want to confront anybody. When they have problems with the neighbors, any sort of a problem at all, he doesn't really have the get up and go to really address it. He would be presented as a super beta dude, a guy. That's the way they push it. And there is a windstorm going through, like Santa Ana winds thing. And of course, there's the threat of fire. And all of that, they think, is what's driving the coyotes to be nearby. They're hearing lots of sounds of coyotes, but they're not thinking there's any kind of a threat. And then, of course, the threat occurs. And there's a whole bunch of different scenes with coyotes getting people from them or the neighbors. And there's an ongoing sort of a subplot between this kind of real drugged out, crazy neighbor dude and his woman of the night encounter, coming back and forth into the lives of this family as the threat grows. And there's like a pet or a pest guy that comes, and he's kind of a version of the John Goodman character from the original Arachnophobia, this quirky weirdo pest control guy that may or may not help them out with the idea of the coyote and incursion. Anyway, this is a movie that's played as a horror comedy, a thriller horror comedy, not really a creature feature, but a creature feature, like more of like The Birds or something, where people are trapped in a location having to fight off dangerous invasion of monsters, in this case coyotes. And all of that sounds pretty fun. If it were more, I don't know, what is the problem with this movie? It's not terrible. It's okay enough. It seems like it's trying to play as an indie movie, and it probably didn't have a ton of money, but it's pretty slick, pretty well filmed. You obviously got a few named people in there, so they've got some ability to push this movie as a little bit more than just your average little low-budget monster movie. But there's something about the concept that should be foolproof that is just, it's lifeless. I don't know how to describe it. Like, I wanted there to be real fun set pieces and real crazy, not super gory. It didn't have to be super gory, but just inventive. You know, you want this to be like creative and active and, you know, sort of funny and, you know, obviously like skewering the, you know, the rich and drugged out and whatever. Just having fun with the whole concept. You know, probably have some bad like coyote puppets, maybe some sketchy CGI or whatever. But this movie in general was just, it tried, but it didn't ever go anywhere very interesting. And I just was bored by it. And I wanted to have it be like a fun ride. And it just wasn't that fun to me. Now, one thing that caught me too is there's been a lot of buzz around this movie, negative buzz, that a lot of people think that the filmmakers used a lot of AI for the Coyotes. Now, I don't know if that's true, but the look of it makes me think that it might be true. There's definitely a couple moments where there's a puppet, but the CGI of the Coyotes, and it doesn't have to be great CGI if it's done in a fun way. Look at RRR was a great example. Or even earlier this year, we had A Breed Apart, which was like, A Breed Apart had almost like, I don't know, like Sharknado level effects. But for whatever reason, that one was so much fun because of how dumb and how over the top and how silly and how the effects, they used them in ways that they really couldn't handle, but it almost made it more absurd just because of how dumb but creative the scenes were. Whereas in this one, they're just the most obvious way of doing things, and the effects are almost too good in the sense that they look slick in that weird AI way. I don't know how to describe it. I could be wrong, but I agree. I believe, like a lot of people, that a lot of AI was used here for the effects, which is a big chunk of the movie. You know, the coyote effects is what you're here for, the coyote attacks. So if it's AI, that's very disappointing. And once again, why do you care? It's, you know, someone using AI or someone using CGI. Well, if they're using AI and not paying people to, you know, take the CGI and manipulate it and to create it and to make it look good or not good and to basically be animators, then you're taking people out of the business that could be doing that job. Now, once again, I don't know if it's true in this movie. Even if it isn't true, even if this is all done with CGI and it is what it is, the movie just didn't do much for me. So I will give Coyotes 2.5 stars. It was good-hearted enough. It was okay. If it was on, I probably wouldn't stay on the channel, though. And that's this kind of movie should be easy. Should be a no-brainer. If you're just come into a room and this is on, you just watch and be like, oh, this is a cool, fun, dumb movie about killer coyotes. And this one is just a dud. So 2.5 stars is the best I can go for Coyotes. No disappointment. I thought this might be a pretty great, fun, you know, little creature feature. Okay, switching books. That was the last one in the first book. And the way I ramble, you would be like, how is it possible that Bruce has using notes? It's like, you should hear me without the notes. It'd be even worse. I wouldn't have any names, that's for sure. All right, let's get to it. Good Boy. Good Boy, directed by Ben Lowenberg, starring as Todd Shane Jensen and as Indy the dog, played by Indy the dog. I-N-D-Y. Is he named after Indiana Jones? I don't know. I mean, Indiana Jones was named after a dog named Indy, so that kind of makes sense. This movie has started getting a lot of buzz, I think since, was it Sundance or South by Southwest? I know it played one festival and got a lot of buzz. Probably just because the concept is like, oh, we have a horror movie from the point of view of a dog. How amazing is that? That's so cool. And it is cool. It's a cool idea. The problem with this movie is it is going to be overhyped in a way that is going to disappoint a ton of people. And that's sad. First of all, I like this movie quite a bit. So I just want to get that out of the gate. And I'm going to do a really short review here without spoilers, but then I'll go into a little spoilers. So I will definitely let you know when that's happening. But I think to approach this movie and to really get the most out of it, I have to get into some spoiler territory. So what I will say in a non-spoilery way, though, is there's no spoilers right now. This movie looks fantastic for a little indie movie. I really love the cinematography here. It's very, of course, you're at the dog's level pretty much the whole movie. And you're not in the dog's eyes, but you're watching the dog. Lots of tracking shots and lots of shots following it around the different locations, which is essentially it's a haunted house movie in the sense that you have the owner or the dog dad, Todd, who basically is suffering with an illness of undetermined illness, probably cancer or something like that, something degenerative and long ongoing and long suffering. And they're going out to this family home that he's inherited, going out to this family home that also has a little bit of a reputation of being haunted. It's almost more like a cabin than a home, but it's out in the woods. And he's taking Indy with him, and it's just going to be the two of them there. And hopefully things are going to be, get a new lease on life kind of a thing, And you are there with him and Indy. And this is where I want to let people know really clearly in the non-spoiler section that a lot of people are going to be like, oh, this is going to be cool. You're going to have either monsters or you're going to have ghosts, and you're going to have this dog having to fight off ghosts or deal with something really spooky. And there's a little bit of that there. But I think that people are going to be hyped that it's going to be this very almost like a live action Scooby-Doo in a sense, and it isn't that. This is much more of a vibe piece. This is much more of like we're hanging out with a dog and his owner in a setting kind of a piece with a little bit of spooky or kind of spooky overtones or ominous overtones. But the vibe of the movie that really works, so that isn't a description that'll give you an idea. So you're not going in there like, why does this movie have no plot? Because if you hate movies like Skinamarink or those kind of movies where it's just a vibe movie through and through, I could see you coming to this movie and also really hating it and seeing like there's no plot here. There's nothing to this movie. It's just a guy hanging out with his dog. It's a very cute dog. It's a very cool dog. He is a good boy. Great actor. It's a great performance by a dog. Now, of course, a lot of that is the way they shoot it and film it and all that, but what a great performance. Star-making turn for Indy is what I would say. But yeah, there's going to be a lot of people really disappointed both by the hype and by their expectations of it being this kind of a, like I said, a real ghost fighting, monster fighting story. Now, why do I like it? I said I like this movie quite a bit, and I do like this movie quite a bit. So what is it that I like about it? I don't really think this is a horror movie. Now, I know what Eric is going to say, and I agree with him in the sense that it is a horror movie of sorts, but only in the sense of like, what is horror and horrifying emotionally to a real human in the real world without any supernatural things? And that is the crux of this movie. Now, Eric might spoil it. I'm going to let you know ahead of time, so that way, if you've heard enough and it sounds like something for you, a vibe movie hanging out with a dog for the whole movie that looks really good, cool, go for it. If you're like, I wanted this to be a cool, spooky, scary, blah, blah, blah movie, real horror movie with a dog as a hero, just be aware that it may be total letdown for you. Okay, here's the spoiler part, the spoiler fit part. I think this movie, once again, is not really a horror movie per se. I think really what it is, the subjective point of view of a dog and how it encounters and how it deals with and how it tries to cope with discovering that it's, I'm going to say owner because that's just the easiest way to describe it. We don't believe in that it really owned when it's an animal, but we'll just call it that. When its owner is dying slowly from something like cancer. And I'm just going to say it's cancer because I think it's something similar to that. And I think what we're seeing is we literally see a couple of his nightmares. We see a figure, like a dark, shadowy, demonic sort of a figure. And I think that's just literally like a subjective personification of the cancer from the dog's point of view. So it's like the cancer, taking over and attacking the owner. And to some degree, it's threatening the dog because what's happening, of course, is the dog's ability to interact with its owner is being threatened as the owner is dying. And even at some points, the owner pushes him away. And that's probably that kind of feeling of when you're suffering and dying. To some degree, you can't even deal with the love of another person, or you just have to lash out because you're so frustrated and angry and sad and know that you're going away from the world. And having something loving around you can almost be like a hurtful reminder of what you're losing, what's slipping away from your grasp. So in a lot of ways, I think this is just like I said, it's an emotional, really sad in a lot of ways, journey about accepting and understanding death. And in that sense, Indy almost doesn't even understand death. He has to see it as this personified, like I said, entity or something. And you get this, this journey in that aspect, and that it is a horror story in that aspect. And I kind of like it. I think it works really well to me too, because I thought about it, and like one of the things that realistically dogs can do is they use dogs to identify cancer sometimes. Like dogs can literally smell like a disease in a person if they're trained to do it and to point it out to other humans. And I thought, well, I wonder if they're trying to show that, but show it in the sense of like, what subjectively does the dog think that is? The dog is seeing it as a threat. So maybe the dog doesn't understand like intellectually in the way we do, like scientifically what that is, but it understands emotionally what that is, and it's affected by it in the sense that it sees it as something scary, terrifying, threatening. And in that way, I really love this movie. I also think there's something else going on in this movie. Once again, I'm still in spoiler section. They keep having moments where Todd, the owner, is watching like old black and white horror movies and sci-fi movies, like these really B movies from like the 50s or 60s, and Indy's watching them with him. So I almost wondered too if it was the idea that Indy was like getting the movies a little bit, and that Indy would take the idea of these kind of scary movies and apply it to the reality of the cancer and think that like that's how he's seeing it. He's understanding it through the lens of these kind of scary movies. So he thinks he's in a scary movie in a degree, when in actuality, all he's in is this slow degrading of life from the disease. I really like this movie quite a lot. And like I said, if you get past the lack of plot in a sense and get into what the themes it's really dealing with and get past the gimmick of it and just let the vibe flow over you, I think Good Boy is a really good movie that I think might have a lot of legs, 4 legs, for example, a lot of legs in the future. I think it has some staying power, and it's going to become beloved for a certain section of the crowd. I'm going to give Good Boy, I was going to go 4 stars, but I'm going to go 4.5 stars. It has stuck with me, and I've really been thinking about it as time has gone on. I mean, obviously I've been sitting there trying to, figure out what it's all getting at and stuff. So obviously it worked on me to more of a degree than just saying like, well, that was a movie about a dog hanging around a spooky house. I think there's something there thematically that's really great. Oh, and I got to mention that Indy the dog, I guess the director, I think the director and writer is also Indy's owner. And there's these footage at the very beginning of it of Indy as a puppy and stuff. And so that stuff, I mean, if you love dogs and you're going to get hit in the feels by seeing like Indy as a puppy and then Indy like dealing with all these things in the movie, you're going to definitely fall in love with Indy. He is a really, good boy. He's a good boy. Okay, next movie. The Lost Bus, directed by Paul Greengrass. Now you must know that name, Paul Greengrass. United 93, he's done a bunch of the Bourne films, he's done a bunch of movies. But especially United 93 kind of comes to mind because that's a real-life harrowing event, of course, around 9/11, and how he dramatized it and really made it a visceral experience, but also it seemed respectful. So I think he's really suited to do what The Lost Bus is about, which is a dramatized version of a real event surrounding the deadly fires in Paradise, California in 2018. For anyone who doesn't remember that, it was in Northern California. A wildfire just blew up during one day and tore through the town of Paradise, and a bunch of people were trapped. A lot of them trying to escape the town, but just clogged on the roads because they had to evacuate so quickly at such a last minute notice that a lot of people were like literally burned in their cars and died. So first of all, hearing all that, you could say this is going to be, a horrifying, gory, intense, just movie. And I think that they wisely went a little more mainstream with the approach of this, and they picked a particular kind of event from that day, but one that wasn't as tragic, but surrounded by the tragedy. And they really veer away from the horror of it. It's there, but this is more of a action thrill ride. This is a dad movie. Like, what is the kind of movie that you would, like those old school war movies, like the Dirty Dozen, or you just think of these like, classic dad movies, cop movies, adventure movies, disaster movies from the 70s or something. This movie kind of fits right into that because it's thrilling, it's got action, it's got danger, it's got a heroic dude, but it never goes too, visceral as far as the gore or the horror of the actual intensity of what occurred to people that time. Once again, basic idea is that you got Matthew McConaughey playing Kevin. These are real people, but I'm guessing there's a lot of stuff that's dramatized here and is not exactly 100% accurate. So let's just take that as a kind of a given here. And he's a bus driver. And then you got Mary, played by American Ferrera, and she is a school teacher. The kids are like probably about 9 to 10 in that age range. And she, obviously teaches at a school. So anyway, he is shown as a bit of a loser kind of dude, right? He's got a strained relationship with his son. He only is back in town because his father had died recently and he'd had a strained relationship with his own father. He's back in town. He has been working as a bus driver for a few months because, once he came back because his dad was dying, his dad passed away. He kind of stayed in town and he's just trying to survive. And you even see a little bit of his bus driving, and he's like, he's always like, he's doing okay, but he'll be the kind of guy, like, he won't be quite on time, or he won't get, they'll be like, hey, you got to be here. He's like, oh yeah, I'll be there. Or something's, he's trying to pay bills. You just feel he's always on the edge of just failing. And on this particular day, even, his kid is back at home with his mother, who's elderly. So the kid and the kid's grandmother, put it that way. It's Kevin's mother, Matthew McConaughey. Those two are off, and the kid is sick, and he's going to go pick up some Tylenol. It's like Tylenol's a big deal. I don't know, whatever. He's going to pick up some Tylenol or whatever and get it back to him while he's in between his bus trips, because he drops the kids off in the morning. He has a little bit of time to go get the bus back to this place to get repaired. It has to sit for a couple hours getting repaired before he goes picks up the kids again, right? But instead, he's going to take a detour and go help his kid. So he's not in the area of town he's supposed to be with his bus. And the dispatcher, of course, is getting annoyed with him because they know he's just not doing exactly what he's supposed to be doing. But he's like, no, I got this. It's fine. I'll be there. And they're like, you need to be there. You need to be there to get the bus repaired. And he's like, whatever. But because he's out of position, when all heck breaks loose, I'm not swearing, Greg, when all heck breaks loose, and the fire is really starting to rage closer to town than anyone expected it was. And there was a little flare up in the morning, but they didn't think it was going to become anything. And immediately it just blew into this crazy firestorm. When all that's happening, he's on the wrong side of town. And there's a call out from the dispatcher that there's this one school and they need to evacuate a whole class of kids, like, 30 kids or something, because there's been a mandatory evacuation. Someone needs to pick him up, and the dispatcher calls out and says who's close by and who can do it. And he's rooting to not be the one because he's got this mission to go get this medicine to his kid, and he's trying to mend his relationship with his kid, and he's getting all dramatic. And of course, he's the only one that's close by, and he has to take the trip. And that's it. Basic setup is him and the class's teacher is American Ferrera, and she's going to hang out with them. He has to get the class from basically the east side of town, which is in imminent threat of just bursting into flames. He has to get the bus from that side of town all the way across town to the safe zone. And the safe zone keeps moving too, by the way, because it is just inundating everything. So on the good side of this movie, like I said, it's a real good straight ahead action adventure thrill ride. If you can get into that dad movie mode, I'm old enough and of the right, ilk for that. then you could probably get into this movie. I think it does what it sets out to do really well. And one of the things it does, I mean, of course it's going to have CGI and stuff. It's not going to have real fire around all these people, but they do a really good job with the effects here. It has that look of almost like night when it's like a full midday fire, but the fire is so intense that the sky and the sun is blotted out and it's pretty much dark, and there's just embers flying everywhere, and the wind is just whipping through, and the flames are just roaring through. It really captures that, and it captures the frantic efforts of the firefighters to try to have some control over this event. And as they slowly see it, not even slowly, but as it quickly slips out of their fingers, and you can see that they have no ability to fight this fire, that's done in a way that really is affecting. I think it's a pretty great action movie, a pretty no-brainer. If you like this kind of movie, you're going to have a really good time here. Well, it's one of those ones that you could I could say you could easily call like a 3-star banger in kind of Eric's approach. I think I like it probably at a 4-star for me. This is, by the way, it's on Apple TV Plus. I believe it's going to be available by the time you hear this, Thursday or Friday of this week. The 3rd, I do believe this launches. So if you have Apple TV Plus, this should be over there. I think this is a really solid movie, and one that's the opposite of something like Good Boy is just like vibes and no plot. This is like plot. Here's the plot. Fire, bus full of kids. Loser guy has to try to become the hero out of nowhere. Can he do it? That kind of a thing. So you can really do one or the other depending on your mood and get what you need. So that's 4 stars for The Lost Bus. All right, turning the page. The last movie I have for you guys is a documentary, and that is called Are We Good? And it's by Steven Feinartz, who I believe is a longtime friend and associate of Marc Maron. And if you don't know Marc Maron, probably most famous now for his podcast, and I can't say the actual name, I'll just say WTF. You probably know what the is. But WTF podcast was one of the early podcasts in the podcast game, and I used to listen to it pretty consistently. I mean, obviously we're on a podcast. We are all, aware of podcasts, and the Film Vault was something we're all linked to, and that's been around about as long as, probably actually as long as what, WTF has been around. And both of them are in that ground floor level of podcasts. The only other one I listen to consistently that's from that era is TBTL, Too Beautiful to Live, which is on like episode 4,500, something like that. They've been around forever from the Seattle area. They've become more ubiquitous than that. I don't know if you ever heard of them, but they're another long going one. And they're a podcast that comes out every day of the week, which is crazy. All right. WTF, Marc Maron. He never got the level of money or fame quite as like a Joe Rogan, but he's also become one of the most respected and long going interview kind of style of podcast that has existed. And of course, the height, I guess, would be he interviewed Barack Obama in his little garage at some point. Also, Marc Maron, of course, the longtime stand-up comedian. And he also worked for a little while with Air America, which is a liberal version of kind of the Fox News radio sort of stuff, but in the liberal side of things. So he's got quite a pedigree, and he's acted in quite a few things too. Very curmudgeonly, he's that cross between not quite Lewis Black anger comic kind of a guy, but like a grumpy, cynical, humorous, observational, just day in his life, kind of introspective. He has that kind of combination of kind of the insecurities of his own personal life and being very confessional, but also being a little bit angry at the world and prickly and hard to, come too close to, a little bit guarded in that way. So what is this approach? This is not a by the numbers sort of a documentary. He doesn't start in the early days and work his way slowly up to where he is now. This is more of a overall, where is he at a certain time, with sprinkling in some of the history to get some overall perspective on who he is and what he's done. And you're really more like hanging out with him in this post-pandemic, like just the end of the pandemic and the beginning of non-pandemic times, when he's trying to dip his feet back into the world of stand-up comedy and kind of coming out into the world again and seeing if he can still do it. In about 2020, it's about that time period. So the basic setup is you're following him as he's doing stand-up again. But like I said, it's very freeform. It crosses back and forth between just talking to him in his everyday life, talking to friends of his here and there, other comedians, seeing some archival stuff of him that kind of interacts with whatever subject he's talking about in the current, quote, 2020 period. And over all of that kind of looms the specter of the death of Lynn Shelton. And if you don't know Lynn Shelton, she's pretty famous. She's a filmmaker and writer that really gained some prominence. She sort of came out of Seattle originally and worked her way into Hollywood. And if you look up her credits, you'll see she's done a lot of things that you probably recognize. But she was not a huge star or a name yet, but she probably would have been by now if she hadn't have died. And she died very young, 50-something. But she essentially kindled up a relationship with Mark. And Mark has had a really rocky relationship with women, and he's had a relationship with drugs that has had a lot of problems. He's had a very tumultuous life. He knows that he's very hard to live with, and for that reason, I think he's been married a couple times before he ended up with Lynn Shelton. And he's had various girlfriends, and it's always been in and out of his stand-up and in and out of his podcast. You would hear about these relationships. And this one seemed to be one that was sticking. It seemed to be like he was really infatuated and really in love and really like probably better for being with Lynn Shelton. And for whatever reason, she really found herself drawn to him. And they seemed to just have found their person. Both in their 50s, they had found their person. And tragically, very quickly during the pandemic, not because of COVID, she actually had this blood cancer that was super acute and caused her to die like very quickly, like almost unexpectedly. Unlike the slow wasting away you get with cancer all the time, this particular blood type that she had, I didn't look up the actual name of it, killed her super quick. So of course he's devastated by that. So everything you see in this movie is shaded by that experience. And even though when the time this is being filmed, she's passed for a few years at that point, it seems like it's still pretty raw with him. It's, in his stand-up, because of course, part of his stand-up is just talking about his life. Even part of his podcast, if you ever listened to it, a lot of people have, but some people maybe haven't. His podcast essentially is about an hour long. He has someone he's interviewing, like say Robin Williams. He famously did Robin Williams. So maybe he'll have a 45-minute interview with Robin Williams, but the first 15 minutes is just Mark talking about whatever's going on in his life right then. It's super neurotic, super introspective, super, rambling. It's just him, raw nerve person. And then he has the interview. Well, in that sense, you can see how there's no way that his, crushing loss of Lynn Shelton wouldn't affect his stand-up too. And it's always back and forth between him figuring out, like, is this just absolutely, me taking apart pieces of her death and using it for my entertainment and for my job? Or is this something that's real? Really looking at that, but also owning it. And I don't want to think this documentary seemed like a bummer. It's not. It's everything you either love or don't love about Marc Maron. I really quite like Marc Maron, so for me, this is just a perfect version of the documentary you'd want. You don't want it to be this linear thing. You don't want it to be the paint by numbers, and this year he did this, and this year he did this, and now we're finally up to the present. It's much more of like how his mind would work. He's thinking about one thing, and that reminds you of something else, so you go off into that corner. And then when that reminds you of something else, you go off into that corner. It's very much more organic feeling. And it seems much more like the way his thoughts would work, and it just lets that be. But like I said, it always goes back to Lynn Shelton and how that has affected him. And I think that's super relatable for anybody. Like most people, unless you're super young or super lucky, has lost somebody very important to their lives, whether it's a parent or a sibling or a person you were in love with, whoever that might be. You've lost someone and had that great sadness in your life. And how do you keep going forward day to day, doing the mundane things in life when you have this huge thing that happened to you, this huge loss. And it's almost surreal. Like, you have that and you have to still live in the world. And you're just seeing him do it in real time in this movie. There's some great moments. I won't ruin them, but there's some great moments where things happen that remind him of her. Like in the moment as they're just talking, he's just talking to the filmmaker. What was his name again? Steven Feinartz. And, he's just immediately back in that mental place. And you see it, and I think it's pretty affecting. It's a great introduction to people who haven't seen him to understand what he's all about. And if you have seen him, I think you're going to feel right at home, and you're going to appreciate the kind of look behind the scenes. There's that feeling here, too, of, oh, that's what the garage looks like. Or, oh, that totally makes sense. I can see that's what Mark Maron's house looks like, or whatever it is. There's that kind of stuff, too. Pretty good, solid documentary. I would say I'm going to go 4 stars. 4 stars on Are We Good? Mostly because it doesn't like take me to a place that's absolutely unimaginable or just open a world up to me in a way I've never seen before. But it does what I want it to do, and it does it really well. So that's 4 stars for Are We Good? Some pretty great movies this week. You've got a few to choose from, depending on your mood. Do you want a neurotic, comedic documentary? Do you want a dad movie about trying to survive in a fire with a bus full of kids? Or do you want a movie about sort of a spooky and yet sad experience with a really good dog and a sick owner? Which one of those do you want? Go on, do it. You'll have some good movies. And probably not the ones that everyone's going to be talking about this week. So hopefully that gave you some stuff to think about and some good movies to check out soon. Talk to you soon.